Good evening. My name is Zakano Cummins, and this is a video summary from two audios by Dr. Frank E. Gabalion. Dr. Frank E. Gabalion treats Nahum as a tightly focused prophetic oracle announcing the fall of Nineveh and the vindication of God's justice. He emphasizes the book's poetic intensity, its historical concreteness, and its pastoral function as a comfort for Judah through the removal of a brutal oppressor. Gabalion places Nahum in the late 7th century BC after Assyria's peak cruelty and before Nineveh's destruction. The genre and tone, he highlights Nahum's compact oracle poetry, such as statical phrases, vivid imagery, and rhetorical questions, and stresses that the book is primarily a judgment oracle, not a theological treatise. So let's look at the exegetical emphasis chapter by chapter. Chapter 1 focuses on God's majesty and wrath. Gabalion underscores the opening portrait of Yahweh as sovereign over nations and nature. God's jealousy, but not like humans, and his reserved wrath are presented as consistent with divine holiness. Let's talk about chapter 2. The fall of Nineveh described in military and visual terms. Gabalion reads the chapter as a dramatic, almost cinematic depiction of siege and collapse, meant to reassure Judah that oppressive power will be overturned. Then we look at chapter 3, the moral indictment and graphic imagery. He notes the catalog of Nineveh's crimes, which consist of violence, deceit, and cruelty, and the rhetorical piling up of images that justify divine judgment. And let's look at some theological points Gabalion stresses. God's justice is real and active. Divine wrath is not a caprice, but a response to systemic cruelty and covenant violation. Then he provides comfort for the oppressed. The oracle functions pastorally. The destruction of Nineveh is presented as a consolation for Judah and as proof that God acts on behalf of the wrong. Then let's look at the prophetic realism. Gabalion resists sentimentalization through the text. He insists on taking its harsh language seriously while reading it with the broader biblical witness that balances judgment and mercy. Now let's switch gears. Dr. Frank E. Gabalion treats Habakkuk as a compact, dialogical prophetic book in which the prophet's honest questioning of God is met by divine summons to see and to trust. Gabalion emphasizes the book's pastoral purpose, which is to teach faithful endurance and to trust in God's justice amid apparent chaos. Gabalion situates Habakkuk in the late pre-exilic periods and read the book against Judah's social breakdown and the rise of violent foreign powers. Let's look at the form and shape of Habakkuk. He highlights the dialogic structure, which is prophetic complaint, divine reliance, and psalm-like prayer. Then he stresses the prophetic verbs of seeing and watching as central to the prophet's vocation. Let's look at the exegetical emphasis. Habakkuk's complaint. Gabalion underscores the prophet's twofold complaint. 1. Why does injustice goes unpunished at home? And secondly, how God can use a more violent nation to execute judgment. Then God answers. He draws attention to God's surprising response, which is the rise of the Chaldeans, and to pivot the line in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, the righteous or the just shall live by faith, treating it as a book of theological hinge. Then chapter 3, the prayer. Gabalion reads the final chapter as liturgical, trust-shaped response that moves from recollection of God's past acts to a vow of praise despite present suffering. Let's look at the theological and pastoral points. Faith amid mystery. Habakkuk models faithful endurance when God's ways are not immediately intelligible. Faith is trust under uncertainty rather than escape from hard questions. Then let's look at God's justice and sovereignty. Divine judgment may work through unexpected means, but God remains sovereign and just. The prophet is called to watch and wait for God's vindication. And this concludes my summary, and I pray that you have been blessed.